Ever found yourself navigating the intricate maze of an enterprise system, trying to figure out who can do what, who sees what, and how on earth all those permissions are managed? It can feel like decoding a secret language, right?
Mm.
Today, we're going on a deep dive into precisely that, the foundational world of P2P users and groups, crucial for both security and sanity in any large organization.
It really is. It's more than just a technical detail. It's the architectural blueprint for your operational workflow.
Hmm.
Understanding these concepts isn't just about system security. It's about designing your company's processes, preventing bottlenecks, and even, proactively mitigating risks like fraud by segmenting critical functions. Our mission today is to maybe demystify these user group concepts a bit and extract the key business considerations, giving you a shortcut to truly being well-informed.
Okay. We've got a comprehensive guide in front of us focusing on P2P users and groups overview, looking at a system like, say, Ariba. We're going to unpack the essentials: who needs a user account, what these groups actually impact, and how permissions are structured, all while keeping an eye on the bigger picture for you. So we've identified this intricate web of permissions. Let's start at the very foundation, like building a secure fortress,
Right.
who even gets a key and why. What's the absolute baseline for needing a digital identity in a purchase-to-pay system? Is it just everyone who touches the system?
Not quite everyone, no, but it's anyone who will actively, create or approve transactions.
Wow.
Also, anyone logging into Ariba's upstream applications. That's usually things like sourcing and contracts, especially if they're in what's called the suite integrated realm.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, an environment where different Ariba modules are connected. And also anyone who needs to be available as an on behalf of user.
Hmm.
Essentially, if you're interacting with the system's core functions in any meaningful way, you'll need an account.
That makes sense. If you're actively contributing, you need a login. But the real magic, or maybe the real headache sometimes, starts with these user groups.
Mm.
Beyond just being labels, what's their fundamental purpose? Are they always a blessing, or can they become a bureaucratic nightmare if not managed correctly?
Well, user groups are fundamentally the control mechanism. They determine which specific functions a user can perform, like creating a requisition or approving an invoice.
Yeah.
They're also crucial for driving approval routing, including those complex queues we all know and love, right?
Right.
And they control transaction visibility. Sometimes they even play a subtle but critical role in customizing the P2P interface itself, maybe dictating field visibility or validation rules. Think of them as a collection of digital keys, where each key grants access to specific areas or actions within your digital workspace. They're definitely a blessing when well-defined, but yeah, a nightmare when chaotic.
That analogy of digital keys really clicks, makes it tangible. So if I'm assigned to, say, a purchasing user group, what specific doors does that key unlock? Are we talking about a single function, or is it more like a suite of capabilities?
You're getting a suite of capabilities, actually. Permissions, or the access to perform system functions, are granted through these group assignments. And what's really crucial to understand is that users receive combined permissions from all groups they're assigned to. It's additive.
Ah, combined. Okay.
So if you're a member of the purchasing user group, you'd have permission to create requisitions.
Yeah.
Simple enough. But if you're also in the receiving agent group, you can create receipts in addition to requisitions.
I see.
And an invoice agent can enter invoices. It all stacks up.
That additive nature is important. It sounds like a lot is controlled by these groups, but are there any actions a user can take, sort of, irrespective of their group assignment, like a universal pass for certain things?
Absolutely. There are some special cases, essentially, a baseline of system functions that any user can perform. For instance, you can always initiate change orders for your own requisitions. That makes sense, right? It's your document.
Mm-hmm.
You can also view and approve documents routed specifically to you, or manually add approvers to documents on an ad hoc basis, and importantly, delete any you've added yourself. Plus, things like performing desktop receiving, being selected as an on behalf of user, and just receiving email notifications and to-do items. These are like personal responsibilities that don't require specific group authorization.
That's a good safety net, yeah, ensuring basic workflow continues. That detail about fixed permissions, that specifically which permissions are associated to each group cannot be modified, that sounds like a huge constraint, doesn't it? It implies you can't just tweak a standard group. You have to align your business roles to what the system already defines. How does an organization even begin to structure roles when that foundation is so rigid?
Exactly. It means the foundation is fixed, and organizations absolutely must align their internal roles to these predefined group capabilities. It's a critical design decision up front. And understanding those capabilities means we need to break down how these groups are fundamentally structured in the first place. So let's look at the basic user group structure. Groups are often organized by two main dimensions: access level and application area.
Okay.
Think of access levels as maybe seniority or scope. You've got administrator, manager, agent, and user. Then application areas are the specific business functions: contract, invoice, payment, purchasing, and receiving.
Hmm.
Standard groups exist by combining these, like a purchasing user or an invoice manager.
So using your building analogy from before, a manager might not necessarily have all the permissions of an agent if they're in different application areas or on different floors, right? It's not a straightforward manager is always more powerful kind of hierarchy.
Precisely. That is a common misconception. Each access level grants a unique set of permissions, which doesn't automatically include all permissions of a so-called lesser access level. It's not a simple accumulation where a manager gets everything an agent has plus more. It's really about a distinct set of responsibilities and capabilities tailored for that specific functional area.
Right. What about systems that span different parts of the business? Like you mentioned upstream processes, which are typically about sourcing and contracts, and then downstream like purchasing and invoicing. How do groups manage that kind of breadth?
That's where shared upstream-downstream groups come in. These groups are explicitly designed to be shared across different product suites within, say, an Ariba environment. This means users assigned to them will have combined permissions for all applications they touch, whether it's sourcing or payment. You see examples like contract administrator, procurement agent, senior analyst, supplier manager. It really streamlines management, prevents you from having to define the same role twice across integrated suites.
Okay, we've talked about what you can do, but what about what you can see? That's often even more critical, I think, for data security and just for keeping users focused on their relevant work. How exactly do these groups act as filters for visibility within the system? This seems like a really complex puzzle to solve correctly, especially in large organizations.
It absolutely is, and it's managed through something called user group assignments by purchasing unit.
Purchasing unit. Okay.
Right. These assignments control transaction visibility, specifically for reporting and searching. They can also influence approval routing, maybe directing documents to specific individuals who perform similar roles, but within a particular organizational unit. This is typically managed via a data file, like a responsibleuser.csv, for bulk uploads, or you can do it directly in the user profile user interface. So, for example, in Purchasing Unit A, you might have John, Kathy, and Helen, while Purchasing Unit B has Seth, Mary, Val, and maybe John again.
So if John is in both purchasing unit A and B, he'd logically have visibility across both of those units.
He would, yes, for his assigned units. However, and this is crucial, remember that basic end users, typically those in just the purchasing user group, can generally only view documents they themselves own and those belonging to their direct subordinates. This default limitation is a really critical control against data sprawl. It helps ensure users are only seeing what's directly relevant to their immediate responsibilities.
This sounds incredibly structured with a lot of predefined roles. But what if an organization has highly specific, unique needs that don't quite fit into these standard boxes? Can they create their own groups for things?
They absolutely can, and these are called custom groups.
Hmm.
Now, while custom groups don't have permissions directly associated with them in the same way standard groups do, they're incredibly useful for other crucial functions.
Like what, for example?
Well, think about using them for specific approval routing paths that are unique to your company. Or for customization purposes, maybe defining specific validations or field visibility on forms for certain users. Or even for setting up different catalog views for various departments. They act more as flexible, logical containers for users, allowing for tailored operational flows where direct permission grants aren't the main goal.
That's a smart way to add flexibility without messing with the core permission structure. What if you want to build upon existing permissions, almost like nested groups, to create more specialized roles without starting completely from scratch?
That's precisely where parent-child groups come into play. You can create a new group as a child of one or more existing parent groups. The child group then inherits all the permissions of its parent groups. This is really powerful for several reasons.
How so?
It can indirectly impact approval routing and notifications through these subgroup assignments. And it's often used to align with centralized security administration processes like LDAP or Active Directory, which might expect, a single role per user in their system. You can manage these parent-child relationships via data files or directly in the User Manager UI. For instance, you might create an Acme buyer group that's a child purchasing agent, maybe purchasing manager, report manager, and even a custom group like buyer-only IT catalogs. It inherits the combined permissions from all of them. This allows for really fine-tuned roles built on a solid standard foundation.
Okay, that's a really deep dive into the architecture. Now let's get really practical. Can you walk us through some of the common specific user groups we might actually encounter? What do they empower users to do day to day?
I think this is where the aha moments happen for understanding how these systems truly work on the ground. Of course. Yeah, let's look at some critical roles, understanding not just what they can do, but maybe why those permissions matter from a business perspective. Starting with the broadest and probably the most sensitive, the customer administrator group. This is a very special and highly powerful role. These users possess system administration permissions, including the ability to import and export data, and critically, they can see all transactional data in the system, every bit of it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, for a suite integrated customer, they can perform both upstream and downstream administration. The business implication here is immense. It's really recommended that only a small number of well-trained users are assigned this role, and with extreme caution, because they essentially hold the keys to the entire kingdom.
So that's your super admin, got it. What about the everyday user we probably see most frequently?
That would almost certainly be the purchasing user. This group is typically assigned to nearly every system user. It grants the fundamental ability to create requisitions and run reports for themselves and their direct subordinates. Basic stuff. They can also create change orders, but only for their own purchase orders. It's the essential entry point for most employees interacting with the P2P cycle. Moving up a level, we have the purchasing agent. This is typically the role of a buyer in many organizations. They are empowered to approve or facilitate non-catalog requisitions. They're responsible for the mark-ordered function for manual orders, and they tend to receive a significant volume of email notifications regarding purchase order statuses. Their role is really central to getting purchases finalized and out the door.
And what if something needs more oversight after that, or needs to be changed after the fact?
That brings us to the purchasing manager. This role is really for super users within a purchasing department. These individuals have more advanced capabilities like creating change orders, but also canceling other users' purchase orders, which is a big control point reopening POs, searching all transactions within their assigned purchasing units, and even editing or deleting comments and attachments made by others.
Okay, that's significant power.
It is. They can also force cancel approvable documents, making them critical for resolving issues and maintaining overall control over the purchasing process. Then, moving over to the financial side, the invoice agent is typically for your AP generalists. These are the folks who create manual invoices and are key in reconciling many invoice exceptions. Their daily work keeps the payment process flowing smoothly. A step up from that is the invoice manager, designed for AP super users. This is another powerful role that should be granted cautiously. Why? Because it includes the ability to edit invoice exception type configuration, which directly impacts how the system handles invoice discrepancies. Big implications there.
That makes sense. Control over exception rules is pretty critical.
Definitely. And for broader financial oversight, the financial processing analyst group is interesting because they can query all transactions within their assigned purchasing units. This is commonly appropriate for AP resources, sure, but it may also include folks in accounting, finance, or even executive users who need that broad visibility into financial flows for reporting and analysis.
It's really clear that each role has a distinct and crucial function. What about contracting? Did we cover that?
Good catch.
Yeah.
For contracts, the contract agent is the go-to group. This group empowers users to create contracts, including things like blanket purchase orders, which are often foundational for many long-term procurement relationships. And finally, let me just highlight a couple of special groups because of their specific business impact. First, the no ad hoc item group. Users in this group are explicitly prevented from creating non-catalog requisitions.
So enforcing catalog use.
Exactly. This is a powerful control mechanism for organizations that want to enforce strict catalog compliance and limit maverick spend outside approved channels. And then there's the finance group. This one acts as a critical fallback for certain out-of-the-box approval rules. If no user in the normal approval chain has a sufficient approval limit for a document, the system will automatically add the finance group to the approval path.
Like a safety net.
Precisely. It's highly recommended to assign at least one user, maybe more, to this group to prevent bottlenecks and ensure approvals always have a path to completion. It's a crucial safety valve for the whole approval process.
Okay, what's fascinating here is we've talked primarily about a single system or maybe an integrated suite. But what happens when you have a truly complex setup? I'm thinking of a global organization, multiple child companies, maybe each with their own instance or realm of the system. How do user and group permissions flow, or maybe not flow, across such a federated environment? This sounds like a potential masterclass in complexity.
It absolutely is, and that's where Federated Process Control, or FPC, comes into play. In an FPC scenario, you typically have multiple child realms, essentially, separate system instances for different entities or regions that all belong to one central parent realm. This creates a complex, yes, but potentially very organized structure for managing various data types. This includes what's called shareable data, master data, transactional data, and configuration or rules data, often across different underlying ERP systems as well.
So, how does that impact the user data we've been talking about? Do users and groups just get duplicated everywhere, or is there a way to streamline that across these different realms? And what kind of strategic choices does an organization have to make here?
Right, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all duplication scenario. The strategic choice really lies in the subscription mode of the child realms relative to the parent. There are three main scenarios for user data loads, each with pretty distinct business implications. Scenario 1, cross-realm reporting mode. Okay, in this setup, the parent and child realms communicate only for reporting purposes. That's it. From a user and group perspective, common data like basic user details and partition data, which is typically organizational specific stuff like purchasing units or departments, are completely separate for each realm.
Totally separate.
Totally separate. This means all user and group data gets loaded independently into each child realm. There's essentially no inheritance from the parent for user data. The business implication here is maximum autonomy for each child realm in managing its users, which might be needed. But it also means increased administrative overhead if you want to maintain consistency across the different entities. Scenario 2, multivariant MV mode. Now, child realms subscribing in MV mode will inherit common data from the parent realm. For instance, entries in a shared user.csv file loaded at the parent level will replicate down to these MV children, giving you a baseline of consistent user profiles. However, additional common data can also be added directly at the child realm level, and critically, no partition data is inherited.
Okay, so some central control, but local specifics remain separate.
It's exactly. This mode offers a balance. Common user attributes are centrally managed, reducing some duplication, but the specific organizational structures and permissions unique to each child realm remain independent. This is often chosen when, say, subsidiaries have unique operational structures that really shouldn't be dictated entirely by the parent. Scenario 3, single variant SV mode. This is the most integrated and tightly controlled mode. Child realms in SV mode inherit both common and partition data from the parent realm.
Both.
Both.
Okay.
So shared user.csv and user.csv entries loaded at the parent will replicate down to these children. This brings down not just user profiles, but also their group assignments and associated organizational data like those purchasing units. Like MV mode, additional common data can still be added at the child realm level for specific local needs. But the big business implication of SV mode is a highly standardized and centralized approach to user and group management. It ensures consistency and simplifies global reporting, but it definitely requires child realms to conform much more closely to the parent structure.
So, understanding these three modes, cross-realm, MV, and SV, isn't just some technical exercise. It's absolutely crucial for how user and group data flows across an organization's various systems. It dictates what's shared, what's managed locally, and fundamentally, how decentralized or centralized your operational control and data governance will actually be. It's a really foundational choice with big consequences. So, what does this all mean when you pull it all together? This deep dive into P2P users and groups reveals that it's far more than just, assigning people to roles. It's a precise strategic architecture that defines who can do what, who sees what, and who approves what, all absolutely critical for an efficient, secure, and compliant system. And mismanagement here can lead to inefficiency, security breaches, potentially serious audit findings. It's important stuff.
Exactly. The core takeaways from our source material really emphasize the importance of methodical, proactive planning. It's not enough to just reactively assign users as requests come in. You need to consistently review user group documentation, clearly define your actual business roles, and then meticulously map those roles to the specific predefined user groups the system offers. Then establish robust tools and processes to manage this mapping ongoingly. Identify specific users for groups across departments, and crucially, always set up a test environment to validate these configurations before you deploy them live. This thoughtful approach prevents so many issues, costly rework, and operational headaches down the line.
Right. As you think about your own systems, maybe consider not just what roles people have on paper, but how those roles are actually translated into precise system permissions. And think about the ripple effect that has on both efficiency and security. Permissions are power, and with great power comes great responsibility in system design. So here's something to mull over. What single, seemingly small permission change in your own system do you think would have the biggest, maybe most unexpected ripple effect, and why? Something to think about as you navigate your own operational landscapes.